The announcement echoed through the crowded station. A metallic voice swallowed by footsteps and hurried whispers. People brushed past, their coats grazing her shoulders, but she stood still, rooted beneath the old clock that ticked 2 minutes slow. Her fingers tightened around a small, battered suitcase, the leather handle warm from the heat of her hand. A red scarf, loosely knotted at her neck, fluttered whenever the doors opened and the cold evening wind bled in. She adjusted it once, twice, as if the scarf carried weight heavier than the fabric itself. Across the platform, laughter burst from a group of travelers. A boy lifted his phone, taking pictures of them mid-motion, their joy trapped forever in frames of light. She flinched. For a second, she saw her own reflection in the black glass of his lens. Then it was gone. Her lips pressed into silence. The noise of the crowd blurred, but her eyes were sharp, searching. Somewhere in that station, behind faces that meant nothing, she was replaying the same thought over and over. What he erased wasn't just photos. It was proof I existed. She sat on the edge of a bench, suitcase resting against her knees. The cracked watch on her wrist ticked unevenly. Its face splintered like a fragile truth. She watched the seconds stumble forward, feeling each one drag across her skin. "Are you waiting for someone?" a stranger asked, but she didn't look up. Her hand shook as she reached inside her pocket. A folded slip of paper brushed her fingertips. No words written on it, just a number she had memorized, and a choice she hadn't made yet. The train screeched into the station. Doors slid open. People poured out and in, colliding, vanishing, reappearing. She didn't move. Instead, she let her gaze follow the blur of faces until it landed on one man at the far end of the platform, a camera hanging from his neck like a noose. For a moment, time stuttered. The scarf shifted. The suitcase pressed harder against her legs. The watch ticked louder. Her breath caught, not because she knew him, but because his camera glinted under the yellow light, cruel and familiar. The crowd surged again, swallowing everything. He disappeared. She rose slowly, the red scarf slipping against her collarbone, her suitcase rolling a half-inch forward on the floor. And in the noise, in the blur, she whispered something so soft it vanished into the air before even she could hear it. "This isn't over." The station buzzed with arrivals, laughter, and hurried farewells. She sat again, suitcase resting like a stubborn shadow at her feet. The red scarf, restless against her throat, carried the faintest trace of her father's cologne, Old Spice and Wind. He had given it to her on a winter morning years ago, wrapping it clumsily around her neck, muttering in that half-gruff, half-tender way. "The world is colder than it looks. Carry warmth with you. The world is colder than it looks. Carry warmth with you." Now, in this station full of warmth she could not touch, the scarf burned instead of comforted. Her eyes followed a boy as he ran into his mother's arms, her hands trembling over his face as if memorizing it all over again. A young couple reunited just a step away, their foreheads pressed together, whispering a language only they understood. She turned away quickly. The cracked watch on her wrist ticked against her pulse, mocking her with time she had no one to share. She thought of nights spent working double shifts, of bills folded and refolded like origami until numbers blurred into one another. She remembered staring at screens where her face had once lived, only to find emptiness where laughter and love had been deleted without care. It wasn't just about pictures. It was about erasure. It was about being told, without words, that she was disposable. The suitcase pressed against her knees again, heavy in more ways than its weight. Once it had belonged to her mother. She knew that. And yet she didn't. Her gaze betrayed her, drifting to him again. His shoes were scuffed, soles thinning, the kind worn past pride into necessity. A wallet slipped from his coat pocket when he shifted slightly, and for a moment, a worn photo peeked out. Edges bent, faces blurred from handling too often. She caught the faint outline of a child, or maybe two, their smiles frozen in time. He tucked it back in with care, as if afraid even air might erode it further. Something in her chest tightened. So he carries ghosts too. The station lights flickered once, a metallic hum vibrating through the rafters. Outside, clouds pressed low, heavy with unspoken rain. A single drop spattered against the windowpane behind her, then another, until the glass quivered with steady trails. The storm gathered like a mirror to her thoughts, confused, swelling, unstoppable. Her mind spun back to the boy across the platform earlier, lifting a camera to capture joy. She remembered the sting in her ribs at that sight, the empty space where her pictures had once lived. She had told herself she'd never let anyone hold that power over her again. And yet here she was, staring at a stranger with a face lined by loss, wondering if he was a threat or a lifeline. The loudspeaker barked again. Final call for passengers boarding. Her pulse quickened. She rose halfway, hand gripping the suitcase handle, scarf sliding off her shoulder in the rush. She could feel the clock ticking, each second demanding a choice. Leave and protect what little she had left, or stay and risk unraveling further. And then she saw it. His eyes, not looking at her scarf, not at the suitcase, not at her hesitation, but at her cracked watch. Recognition flickered there, as if he understood broken time too well. Her breath caught. Was this fate, weaving strangers into threads already frayed? Or was it manipulation, the cruel symmetry of one wound meeting another? The storm outside roared, thunder shaking the windows. The train hissed, doors waiting. She froze between steps, torn in two, the red scarf brushing against her lips like a secret unspoken. The stranger didn't move. He only watched, and she could not decide if that made her safer or more in danger. The train's doors chimed, sharp and urgent. Passengers surged forward in a blur of coats, bags, and goodbyes pressed hastily into embraces. She stood in the middle of it all, rooted yet trembling, the suitcase handle digging into her palm until her knuckles turned pale. Her chest ached with the effort of holding herself together. One step, that's all it would take. One step and the storm of this station, of him, of the memories clawing at her, would dissolve behind her. She inhaled sharply and turned away. The scarf slipped loose in the motion, unraveling from her neck. It tumbled softly to the ground, a ribbon of red cutting across the gray floor. She froze, eyes stinging. The scarf, her father's warmth, her shield, her last fragile tether, lay abandoned among careless shoes. Before she could bend, another hand reached it first. He stood there, holding it, his fingers curled with an unexpected gentleness. He didn't lift his gaze at once. He only smoothed the fabric once, like someone who knew what it meant to hold something that could not be replaced. When he finally looked at her, his eyes were quiet storms. Her throat closed. Why him? Why now? A voice nearby pierced the silence. Pick it up, girl. Don't make a scene, an older woman muttered, her tone heavy with the tired judgment of strangers. Another passenger sighed loudly, annoyed at the pause in the flow of bodies. She felt their eyes like weights pressing her down, as if her grief was an inconvenience, her hesitation an offense. The stranger stepped closer, scarf still in hand. His voice, when it came, was barely more than air. Some people carry more than just bags, they carry silence. Her knees almost buckled at the words. She wanted to reach out, to take the scarf back, to anchor herself in something familiar. But her fingers stayed curled at her side, trembling. The cracked watch ticked against her wrist, louder, harsher. She glanced at it, then at him. And for a moment, she thought she saw her reflection in his eyes. Not the girl she was but the one she was trying to become. Stronger. Angrier. Still breaking. Rain hammered harder against the glass above, streaking the station in silver. Thunder rolled, muffled but insistent, like the echo of choices she couldn't unmake. He extended the scarf toward her. Not forcing, not demanding, just holding it. She looked at him one last time, every muscle in her body caught between flight and collapse. The train doors hissed, warning of closure. Her breath faltered, and in that fragile second, everything in her screamed. Yet nothing left her lips. The train pulled away, its roar dissolving into the storm outside. She hadn't boarded. The scarf, now back around her neck, clung damp against her collarbone as if absorbing her unrest. The cracked watch pulsed against her wrist, each uneven tick a reminder. She was running out of time to keep pretending she could walk away. She dragged her suitcase through the station's quieter corridor, her reflection fractured in the rain-specked glass. The stranger followed, not close enough to startle, not far enough to forget. She told herself it didn't matter. Yet every echo of his footsteps tightened something inside her. Then she saw it. A poster on the wall. Grand opening, Lennox Cameras. A legacy of capturing what matters. The name seared into her. The company she had just applied to that morning. The one she prayed would save her from endless night shifts and bills stacked like tombstones. She stared until the letters blurred. Her pulse stumbled. She turned her head. And there he was, adjusting his coat, rain dripping from his hair, the faint glint of a keychain shaped like a camera dangling from his pocket. Recognition hit her with cruel clarity. He wasn't just a man with worn shoes. He was the owner. The gatekeeper of the very place she had staked her fragile hope upon. Her stomach twisted. Fate, or manipulation? Was this coincidence, or a trap she had walked into blind? She pressed her hand against the suitcase to steady herself. For the first time, she saw the scarf not as her father's gift, but as a relic bound to another story. Because in his hand, moments ago, it hadn't felt like hers alone. A memory echoed, her father's voice half gruff, half tender. The world is colder than it looks. Carry warmth with you. The words returned now, but bent. Because what if this man, with his quiet eyes and broken edges, carried warmth once, and lost it? Her eyes dropped to his wallet, where the photo had slipped earlier. She realized then, the red scarf was not just fabric. It was almost the same shade as the dress worn by the little girl in that faded picture. His daughter. Her throat ached. The silence between them no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like a bridge she could not burn. The cracked watch ticked louder. The suitcase grew heavier. She felt herself crossing a threshold inside. Past the point where she could tell herself this was nothing. Her hand trembled as she reached for the station door. Beyond it waited the meeting room where interviews for Lennox Cameras were being held. She pushed it open, scarf slipping forward like a flag, and stepped inside. Nothing would be the same after this. The interview room was smaller than she imagined. Walls painted a sterile gray. A long table that smelled faintly of polish. Rain tapped at the window like impatient fingers. Her suitcase rested at her feet, the red scarf coiled in her lap. She tried to steady her breathing, but her chest burned as though she'd carried storms inside too long. When the door opened again, her heart stumbled. It was him. The stranger from the station. No longer anonymous, no longer a shadow. Here he wasn't just a man with scuffed shoes and a fading photo. He was Mr. Lennox, the name printed across glossy posters. The man who could decide if she'd claw her way out of debt or sink deeper into it. He paused when he saw her, as if the rain from outside had followed them in. His gaze landed on the scarf first, then the cracked watch on her wrist, then finally her face. Silence folded itself between them, sharp and trembling. She wanted to stand, to demand answers, to confess the truth of what his camera had stolen from her life. But her throat locked. He broke it first. "You remind me of someone," he said softly. The words weighted with something she couldn't name. Her fingers tightened around the scarf. "Your daughter." The word slipped out before she could stop it. He didn't flinch, but the flicker in his eyes was confirmation enough. The room seemed smaller now, the air heavy. The scarf burned in her lap, not just hers anymore, but a thread between their griefs. "You want the job," he said, not a question. She nodded, though her chest ached. She wanted more than the job. She wanted dignity, a chance to exist in her own story again, not erased by anyone. He exhaled slowly, leaning against the table. "I don't choose people for what they can do. I choose them for what they carry. You carry too much silence." Her pulse pounded. For a moment, she thought he would turn her away, leave her with nothing but the echo of what might have been. But then he slid a file across the table. "The position is yours." Not because of skill, not because she earned it, but because she was a mirror, of a child he lost, of a silence he knew too well. The room seemed smaller now, the air heavy. The scarf burned in her lap, not just hers anymore, but a thread between their griefs. "You want the job," he said, not a question. She nodded, though her chest ached. She wanted more than the job. She wanted dignity, a chance to exist in her own story again, not erased by anyone. He exhaled slowly, leaning against the table. "I don't choose people for what they can do. I choose them for what they carry. You carry too much silence." Her pulse pounded. For a moment, She thought he would turn her away, leave her with nothing but the echo of what might have been. But then he slid a file across the table. The position is yours. Not because of skill. Not because she earned it. But because she was a mirror, of a child he lost, of a silence he knew too well. On the dresser, under the dim glow of a single lamp, she opened the top drawer. Inside, she folded the red scarf carefully, smoothing its edges before setting it down. Not discarded. Not abandoned. Just resting, where it could keep warmth without weighing her down. Her fingers lingered on the fabric, and a memory returned. Her father's voice, half gruff, half tender. The world is colder than it looks. Carry warmth with you. But tonight, another voice joined it, quiet and unexpected. Sometimes love is not romance, it's recognition. She closed the drawer gently, as though sealing a chapter. Later, she sat by the window, watching drops of water slide down the glass, catching faint glimmers of streetlight. Across the street, she saw people laughing outside a cafe, their reflections mingling on the wet ground. For the first time, she didn't look away. Her phone buzzed once, a message confirming her place at Lennox Cameras. She read it, then set it face down on the table. It wasn't triumph she felt. It was something quieter, something rawer. She had walked into the storm and come out marked by it. Her hand brushed the cracked watch again, and she realized she no longer hated its imperfection. Time didn't need to be whole. It only needed to move. She whispered into the empty room, not to anyone, not even to herself fully. This isn't over. It never really is. Her reflection in the glass looked back, stronger, steadier, though still shadowed. She didn't smile. But she didn't break either. Outside, the night deepened, endless in its silence. She leaned against the window frame, eyes following the blurred lights, letting the quiet wrap around her like a cloak. Not every wound heals clean. Not every ending is a door closing. Some are just pauses, waiting for breath. And as she exhaled, she thought of the strangers who passed through us, leaving echoes louder than presence. Maybe the hardest truth is this. Not every recognition is meant to stay, but every recognition changes what we see when we look in the mirror.